Recording in progress.
Okay, I'm going to gavel the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Alameda County Water District Board of Directors. And it's 4 p.m. right now on September 28th. We're meeting at the district headquarters. And I would like to ask the district secretary to please take the roll.
Yes, Directors Gunther,
Here.
Akbari,
Here.
Huang, here, Weed,
Here.
and Sethy.
Here. So would our district secretary like to lead us in the salute? A rare opportunity. The flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Look if we have any members of the public here.
We do have 2 members of the public in attendance, all virtual.
All right, so I will ask if there are any public comments on matters that are on this notice of special meeting from no one in the audience. Anybody online?
And as we have folks contemplate that question, I can do real quick housekeeping just to make sure they all know how to participate. Again, good afternoon. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome the public's participation in this special meeting of the ACWD Board. My name is Ed Stevenson and I serve as the district's general manager. Members of the public may participate in this board meeting in person or remotely by either using the Zoom application or by telephone. Any member of the public participating in person may approach the speaker's podium at the appropriate time. For those participating remotely, note that the meeting agenda, all related materials are all available on the district's website at acwd.org. And you may reference the instructions at the top of the agenda how to participate using the controls in the Zoom app or your dial pad if you're participating by telephone audio. This hybrid board meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public for future viewing. And President Sethy, that completes my housekeeping remarks.
Okay, we will now turn our attention to the specific matter of this board meeting. This is a strategic planning workshop, and I will turn it over to our staff to read us into this activity.
Thank you, President Sethy. And just to confirm for the record, we're not seeing any hands raised in our attendees list, but feel free to raise your hand. We'll have plenty of opportunity to provide public input and comment as we go. I'll ask our District Secretary, Ms. Marcoux, to please bring up our presentation for this afternoon. Basically, again, my name is Ed Stevenson. Early in the presentation here, we have a number of abbreviations and definitions and so forth. That's mostly for the public to be able to follow along. Of course, in the water industry, we're very acronym heavy. And so, so this is just kind of a reference for folks to be able to understand completely what we're talking about, some of the issues that we'll bring up. The agenda for this evening, we'll take a look at a review of our 2018 strategic plan. That's the strategic plan we're currently operating under, just to kind of refresh our memories about a number of topics. And we'll talk a little bit about how our existing strategic plan has guided our operations and our priorities. We'll talk about we'll really hope to get some input and feedback from the board and from the public about certain considerations about sort of updating our strategic plan, because that's really the next step in the process that we're beginning with this workshop today. And then we'll ask for some of your thoughts about certain things like the duration of the plan, whether we're looking to do a major reboot or kind of an update of our strategic plan, talk about stakeholder participation and whether we want to have a facilitated process or not. Again, these are sort of just kind of like the fundamental factors that'll help us scope the remainder of the process. And I just would stress that nothing is binding in terms of direction or feedback from the board this afternoon. We just want to get a flavor for where the board's head is. And if there's public input on these issues, it's certainly welcome as we go along. So that's what we plan to discuss today. In terms of objectives for this evening / afternoon, It's an initial discussion to set the direction for a strategic planning process. As the board recalls, in 2017 and 2018, we had quite a process that we all went through, engaging with the public on creating our first strategic plan. And so we want to kick off another process to carry on our strategic planning beyond 2023. As part of that, we want to get the board's initial thoughts on some of these topics and hear from the board and the public about things that'll inform the remainder of the process of this strategic planning process. Well, another thing I want to emphasize real quick is that we're not actually doing strategic planning this evening. So we're not planning to get into the meat of what should be in our strategic plan or our strategic plan update, but rather help kind of scope the approach. So we don't need to get into the strategic planning elements. We don't need to get into strategic initiatives, and we don't need to get into sort of the tactics that will be in an updated strategic plan or a new strategic plan. Thanks, Ms. Marcoux. Okay, so I thought we'd start with just kind of a reminder about what a strategic plan is, kind of help us set our compass for our discussion. And for this, I'm leaning heavily on materials and training and resources that I've gleaned from the California Special Districts Association. They've got a lot of good information about strategic planning, the elements of strategic planning, the process options that are available in strategic planning and so forth, and also some other materials that I've referenced. But basically, a strategic plan is that top-level directional document, establishes priorities for the agency, priorities for the application of limited resources, right? Because that's always going to be a constraint for the things that we do. We need to make sure that we're all moving in the same direction, in a direction that that the board wants us to be moving in, and we have limited resources to be able to move in any direction. So we want to make sure that we're applying those resources in a way that's most efficient. Of course, our strategic plan drives subsequent planning. And for us, that means a whole number of plans that are very, very important for the organization that really drive the details and how we implement the various projects and programs within the district. Some examples are shown here. This isn't all of them, but of course, our strategic plan drives our financial planning. It drives our capital improvement planning to a great extent. It drives water supply planning too. And of course, as the board knows, that we're also engaged in the very initial activities related to water supply planning initiative. It drives infrastructure planning. The example here is the CIP engineering report. It drives emergency preparedness and response planning and staffing plans and so forth. So the strategic plan is that top level document, sets the overall direction and the compass for the organization. And then we start getting more into the tactics and the specifics in the subsequent planning work that we do. The strategic plan is visionary and it's proactive and it's not reactive. Okay, so those are what the strategic plan is. What isn't the strategic plan? What is a strategic plan not? Well, it's not a wish list. It's not all of the things that we would love to be able to do. I think the board and the public recognizes that this organization can do pretty much anything, but we can't do everything. So it's not an exhaustive list of things we'd love to be able to do. It's not a box to check just so we say we have a strategic plan, a document to put on the shelf. It is something that is actionable and that will set accountability for the organization. It's something that we will track and we'll measure our progress against. And that's part of the implementation of the plan. It's not a mechanism to achieve a single director's objective. It's really a composite plan. It's a plan that includes all of the directors and our collective decisions as to what we should be working on as an organization. Again, it's not integrated resources planning, but of course it is very much related. And I think the board remembers the process we went through in 2018. And there is some interrelationship between the two. And again, not heavy in tactics, not to say we can't have tactics in our strategic plan. We actually have a fair amount of tactics in our existing strategic plan, but we need to be focusing on the overall objectives, what we're trying to accomplish, the overall plan, and then generally the tactics get worked out in subsequent planning. Okay, so let's take a quick step back to 2018 and we can relive the glory days of when we developed our 2018 strategic plan. It was developed in 2017 and 18 through a series of public workshops. And it was, we ended up with a 5-year strategic plan, with this year being the sort of last year of the strategic plan. The board, through all of that work and those discussions and having heard from the public, the board really condensed many issues into kind of 4 main areas of focus. And those were water supply and quality, finance, workforce, and communication. I think you know that the strategic plan that we have now has more overall categories than that, but those are sort of the main areas of focus that the board got into in-depth discussion in 2017 and 18. So taking a look at each one of those individually, water supply and quality, obviously as a public water agency, this is about as big as it gets for us. And so the board had a lot of interests and a lot of areas that were discussed. We won't go through all of that. I want to rehash it all. But I just thought I'd remind the board of some of the key interests that were kind of consolidated from the various discussions that the board had during that prior strategic planning workshop. Those were sort of distilled down into some key interests that were discussed. And I've got some listed here under water supply and quality. The board's interests were for to plan for short-term and long-term supply and quality needs to meet the district's mission. So that meant we want to make sure that we're thinking in the near term, but we also want to make sure that we're thinking in the long term, that we're thinking about contingencies, and that we're really prioritizing water quality. And we need to have a plan that that allows us to meet all of these overall objectives over time. And so that was one of the key interests that the board expressed. Another interest, it's related certainly to water quality, and that is the board put hardness, taste, odor together with meeting drinking water regulations, basically signaling to staff that we have multiple objectives there, right? Obviously, meeting regulatory standards is key, but the board also emphasized that there are other things that our customers need from us in the way of services. And so the board included those as important interests that were discussed. So for each one of these 4 categories where I'm refreshing your memory as to how those discussions went, I thought I would ask for initial thoughts about these categories and whether or not the main interests as they were distilled back in 2017, do they still pretty much meet what you see as key interests for moving forward? Again, nothing's binding. We'll have plenty of time to talk through other things, but I just wanted to take an opportunity to see if there's anything that strikes you as maybe something that was missing from these key interests, or maybe anything else you want to mention as we kind of scope the rest of this process. So I thought I'd pause there for a moment and get your first thoughts.
Let's start here. You also mentioned your initial comments, duration and length.
Yeah.
It strikes me that a strategic plan should at least be within the time frame of the IRP, or whatever we wish to call it, which is 25 years. Should be reviewed periodically in that time, adding, so, but water years, 5 years is incredibly short.
Right. Yeah. And I think in 2017 and 18, we called it a 5-year plan because we had strategic initiatives that we wanted to accomplish within that 5-year period. But many of those initiatives were really focused on the very long term, going out beyond 25 years, going, 50 years and more in some cases. So So it may be semantics, but I think our strategic plan needs to recognize our needs in the distant future.
For a 2050 plan, or what, which seems to be a nice round number. Also and we have to periodic updates because they're black swans like PFAS that come along that can change the much of our initiatives and legislative and political decisions that could come into play. And we need to have something where we have some basic water planning concepts, such as reliability control and even ownership, which is best through ownership of your water supply assets. Get out of open channels. Those type of things are bedrock to the water industry, and hopefully we can put them into our main document.
Right. So it sounds like, interests from that standpoint are, we want to ensure that our planning captures the long term, and that that our planning needs to capture the board's interest in, minimizing exposure to certain uncertainties, maximizing the use of available resources and things along those lines.
And we use the word contingencies, but I don't know that I've seen any true contingency planning or implementation in that 5 years. Thank you.
Okay. And again, we're just on the water supply and quality, and I'll go through the other three too. So we'll have opportunities to look at each one.
Any other board comments?
I think it's still relevant for me. I don't think we need to, at least I don't believe we need to update these objectives. And I think my interest is still very similar to what's listed here.
At any time, if there are any public comments, I will be looking at our board. So feel free to raise your hand as we go along.
I think my comments are similar to Director Huang. I feel like this is still pretty relevant. I don't know if this would fall under the water supply and quality topic, but I would say maybe just defending against external risks like PFAS or other, changing regulatory concerns. I feel like we kind of capture that here, but I would just make that a little bit more explicit.
Yeah.
So defending against external risks or minimizing risk to existing sources of supply.
Yeah. This definitely, there were a number of things that came up since we sort of, pressed the print button on our last strategic plan. We'll talk about a little bit about that going forward, but yeah, that it became very, very apparent that there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and we don't know what's going to happen even 6 months from now, right?
This still fits for me. I think everything we've had the last 5 years kind of is encompassed to some degree or another right here. And we're going to see again another 10, 20, maybe longer.
Yeah, these are pretty durable interests, right, for a water agency. Okay.
I don't have any comments right now. We have a lot of material to cover, and I want to reserve my comments until we've waded through all the subject areas.
Okay, no problem. Well, this one we don't have to talk about. This is just a reminder of how all of that discussion and the work around those interests resulted in specific strategic goals for the agency. And as you remember, and just for the public's benefit, our strategic plan is organized by these topic areas. And then we have overall strategic goals, and then we have strategic initiatives under those goals. And so there's a lot in our strategic plan that's sort of rolled up under these types of items. So, but under water supply and quality, the key strategic goals were number 2, which is to sustain a reliable, high quality water supply for district customers. And number 1.2, continue to meet water quality standards 100% of the time. And of course, there are lots of other specific initiatives and so forth in the strategic plan that are rolled up under these, but this was kind of the key strategic goals under the water supply and quality element. All right, so now moving on to the area of finance. With the discussion during our last approach towards strategic planning, there was again a lot of discussion amongst the board and the public about finance. The board's interest, again, as sort of distilled during that time, were the key interests were to improve the district's financial stability during potential variations in water sources, demand, regulations, and other factors. And the board also expressed interest in cost reasonableness, and a number of rate structures were discussed that were really trying to kind of accomplish a number of things or set us up to be able to accomplish a number of things from a rate standpoint. So again, we don't need to come up with tactics or specific strategic initiatives at this point, but I just wanted to, again, put these in front of the board, let you kind of digest them for a moment and see whether or not those board interests from back then, do they still ring true with you? Do you have other things that are of interest to you as we approach the scoping of our next process?
Word equity is not in here, and it's one of the political drivers in California.
Mm-hmm.
These are still relevant for me, but I probably would have elevated reasonable cost a little bit higher. Right now, at least the way it is on the slide, it seems to be a little bit of an afterthought.
Just to, for the record, I didn't reprioritize any of your prior discussions. These are kind of what came off of sort of some of the deliverables under the prior process.
It looks good to me.
Mine too. Mine too.
Okay. All right. Again, as a reminder, oh, I thank you, Mr. Director Akbari. We have a hand up, Mr. Nishimura.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so going back to the previous slide, I think as the board was talking about external risks or external forces, I think the district should also include that in the finance section because the state of California is passing legislation that is going to restrict or impact the amount of water that the district can sell by imposing water budgets and things like that. So those are maybe not completely unknown, but they're coming down the pipe, and including those legislative external forces in your strategic plan should be considered. Thank you.
Good comment. Thank you. Okay, and just a quick reminder of the strategic goals that came out of the various discussions about finance, and that was to maintain and improve the cost effectiveness and value of district services, and also improve the district's financial stability and transparency. And so again, there's a lot of initiatives that are under those, some that directly relate to finance, others that relate to other parts of the organization, but finance kind of permeates everything. So. And Mr. Nishimura's hand is still up, so I'm not sure if that's from, there we go. Okay, and then again, the third one of those major sort of categories was workforce. And again, the board's kind of discussions as distilled were, the interests were recruit and retain a highly engaged, innovative workforce to provide the highest caliber water management for the community. And in interest also discussed included identifying key motivators for current and future employees and leveraging recruitment processes, district policies, and workplace design to maximize employee resources. It's kind of a mouthful and there's a lot there, but I wonder if those still ring true.
I think that one thing that we were aware of kind of on the horizon, but it wasn't really seriously discussed in conferences, is the whole issue of DEI and inclusiveness, and that this needs to be part of our strategic plan on employment, workforce issues, workforce planning, and that when someone reads our documents, they understand that we are very sensitive to these issues.
And I know that I've had frustrations on the way we approach interns, and would hope that when we talk about a workforce, we have a broader concept in mind.
I would say workforce as a category includes all human resources that are, dedicated to the district. Yeah.
And my feeling and my frustration is
Yeah.
we've limited it in our mind.
You know, at one time, the district had a relationship with Washington High School for seniors that could start engage in a early career with the water district. And many of those employees spent their entire life career here, including quite a few who have resigned during last year, retired. And so I want to build on what Director Weed is saying, that these kind of opportunities should not be overlooked. And it helps to get people started on a career path.
So I just want to follow up on what Director Sethy said earlier. So perhaps the first bullet, we could add the word diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I am fine with it as is.
And I'll just say that my comments were going to be related to DEI and to expanding interns, as I think you and I just spoke about very recently. So I will just co-sign those comments.
I'm satisfied, although I do strand with Director Weed and Sethy on all of us, I think, on the intern concept. Working in the rail industry, it's not something a lot of people think about when they're in high school. Working in the water industry is probably something they're thinking about even less.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some incredible candidates out there, and you just have to turn their interest on.
Yeah.
You'll get them.
That's great. I really appreciate your thoughts, because I think I think staff and management are having similar thoughts. So it's good to hear you all thinking the same things. We know that workforce is going to become tougher and tougher to maintain. And there has been a fair amount of thought into, like, how are we going to bridge that gap between awareness and bringing people into the organization? So, and I will admit, as I was thinking through this myself, I started to get right into tactics, and I started thinking about both DEI and the workforce thing. And I told myself, don't get into tactics right now, stay out. But I will admit, I was thinking about things like on the, sort of diversity and inclusion standpoint. Do we want to try and make sure that our candidate pools more closely reflect the community that we serve, and things like that. But again, we'll have time to get into specifically what we want to accomplish in order to achieve overall objectives.
Another note, it's remarkable to see a workforce statement without the word diversity in it.
Things have changed for sure over the last several years. And again, just a little reminder here, where our resulting strategic goals that arose from those discussions was key. The key one there is number 4, which is improve workforce recruitment, maintain retention, and enhance employee engagement. And I can already see that with an updated strategic plan, that might be tweaked somewhat. Okay, and then the last sort of major category of the topics that were discussed in the prior sessions, the board's interest under communications, we're really focused on external communications, engaging with our stakeholders, with our community, with our customers. And these were the key ones: to tell simpler stories on a broader range of topics, connect with wider and specific audiences, and increase understanding and support of district functions. Interests also discussed included conducting a customer survey and leveraging e-billing and AMI to improve customer engagement. It's a little bit unfair to say, do these still ring true? I mean, we've done some of that already. But overall, based upon what you're seeing and recalling from prior discussions, does this still seem about right? Or are there major areas in terms of communication and customer engagement that you think ought to be considered as we move forward in our strategic planning process?
I'll start again. We do community outreach. We don't do community engagement. We're an engineering organization. People stay behind security, and we have limited contacts. Where we do have contacts, it's a great response, but it's limited. I've suggested we look at creating a foundation, and take the staff and budget and put our community engagement into an auxiliary organization that would be able to accomplish that. I think far more effectively than we can as an engineering organization. But that's my take.
I'm going to say that I remember when we had a lack of communications when I started on the board, and I asked for a consultant to come on board, Fiona Hutton, to prepare a communications plan for us. And as a result, we started to make some hires. We made a lot of progress between 2012 and 2018. And I feel like we've grown by leaps and bounds since 2018. I think this is one of the clear areas of not only achievement, but maybe overachievement and getting ourselves more broadly known in the community. I think we are doing a fantastic job, and I just would encourage us to keep it up. I would like to see, maybe this is getting down into tactics, but I think we need somebody like Frank John back here at the district that engages with the schools on a regular basis, not just Zoom or anything like that. More for the environmental science classes that go on in the junior high and high school arena. Colleges too.
At the risk of getting too far into detail, there were mechanisms to accomplish that at a fraction of the cost. The same thing that Frank John was doing. We were spending $1,000 a visit. That was getting pretty expensive.
So I am mostly fine with the interest. The only thing I'm a little bit torn about is conducting another customer survey. I can support that if we have very specific goals in mind, instead of just, are you happy with us? If it's a survey, I rather see it as, are you happy with what we're doing and what can we do to improve? That would be a slightly different type of survey for me. So I am on the fence about that one.
That's great. We'll actually talk about customer engagement here in a little bit more detail. That'll be good to talk through.
Yeah, likewise, I'm okay. I personally am very much in favor of a customer survey because I like the feedback that we can get from the community. So I think I would love to see us do another one. And I think after a while, as we start to do more of these, we'll start to see progress being made as well.
One question could be, grade your directors.
You sure you want to ask that?
I think the question would be, name your director. Sorry.
Yeah, that's great. That's good feedback. I mean, we will talk a little bit more about customer engagement and customer surveys and so forth. So that's great. And then again, out of those discussions came strategic goal number 5, which is promote clear and open communications, outreach, and engagement with customers and communities. And I'll just note that among the several initiatives associated with that, goal was to do another customer survey. We had done one in advance of the last 5-year strategic planning process. And so we're in the process right now of scoping the one that was set up to be done under the prior plan, but there's always time to change.
You know, at the recent CSDA conference, Mr. Stevenson and I sat in one of these community engagement seminars there. And there were a lot of ideas. I especially like the ones about storytelling that came out in our morning presenter that came from Pixar as well. And I think there's quite a few opportunities to tell stories for different areas of the district, including going back to workforce opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I tell you, I got a little shaken up.
Oh, by the way, you may recall I gave you what is kind of a Bible for me that was written in the Harvard Business Review back in the 1990s.
Oh, yeah.
How 3M
Right.
does strategic planning. And they completely transformed the way that they did strategic planning. And I adopted that in my jobs in Silicon Valley. And the main point was you got to tell a story that captures people's minds. And then the gentleman from Pixar was telling, Matthew Lunn was telling the same story about his stories.
Yeah, and the little video he showed at the end of that was this commercial. It really was it tugged on the heartstrings. It got me. It was a good demonstration of what he was talking about. It's called the Snow Date. If anybody wants to look it up. We've had discussion about that at exec staff.
It made me cry.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a good demonstration of telling a story quickly. Okay. So I thought what we would do here is kind of take a look at, kind of step back and take a look at our current 2018 strategic plan and take a step back and understand how it has driven the activities of the district. And so I and each of my colleagues will kind of talk about how the current strategic plan has really driven the priorities within their departments and within the district, just to kind of reset sort of our understanding and expectations about what the strategic plan actually means for the organization and how it has driven our priorities. So I thought I'd start out just real quickly and in general terms. Obviously, from the Office of the General Manager's standpoint, the strategic plan drives those overall priorities of the organization: customer service, which is one of the things that our employees hear about all the time, and that are really good. They perform really well in this area and are great examples of providing customer service and the importance of service to our customers, both internal and external, as part of what we do. It's a huge priority here. Infrastructure, obviously water supply, water quality, emergency preparedness, finances and workforce, and including diversity and inclusion, because those are things that we're focusing more and more on, respecting that that it's important to our current employees, but also to our prospective employees. Obviously, we just had some comments about communication. Again, both internal and external. We do a lot more now than we ever did in terms of leveraging social media, various types of media in terms of outreach to our customers, traditional media. We've been doing more in the way of tours of facilities and so forth, special tours, special tools having to do with unique ways of getting in contact with our customers when necessary. And then, more in the way of engaging with community groups and others in terms of presenting topics that are of interest to folks in our community. Employee engagement, been doing a whole lot of that too. That was specifically addressed by the board in our current strategic plan. initiatives that were targeted to improving and increasing engagement of employees. We've done a number of surveys. We've done workshops. We've done sort of task forces amongst folks. And from that, we've developed an employee engagement action plan and are really focusing on key areas where improvements in those areas would result in the greatest level of increase in employee engagement. And those things we're really, really pushing right now are a communication plan and a change management plan. We have these plans. These are internal plans. They're in place, and we're expanding them over time. So core metrics has been an important part of how we track our performance in lots of areas. In the 2018 strategic plan, there were a number of core metrics discussed and set up. We've expanded on that pretty significantly. The idea there is to track and increase our effectiveness and allow us to really apply those limited resources to areas of priority. It's been a motto of mine that you can't improve what you don't measure. And so what the board set up in our current strategic plan has been great. I think you might recall that in our budget document, we actually highlight some of those core metrics, really some key ones for the organization. I really applaud our finance staff for a greatly improved budget document. Hey, that's an engagement document right there, and a transparency document. But it also, helps with accountability. We more frequently than just every time we publish a budget, but we review these core metrics and strategic initiatives to ensure that we're making progress where we can and where it matters.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What does change management exactly mean? Is that succession planning, or is it something broader?
It's broader. It's really, in the context that it's given here, it's really mostly an internal thing. But what it means is when we roll out something new, say a new strategic plan, for instance, we want to ensure that all of the stakeholders involved in that are going to be involved in actually implementing that change, that they're all informed as to what's going on, the reasons why, that they're given the resources and the tools to be able to make that change, that we do it in a much more intentional process. And so that, because we've had issues where, and it came up in our surveys, internal engagement surveys, where a change that we'll make because we need it for a business purpose, we're just doing it, being efficient, and we're just making the change. We don't get the buy-in. It's not an efficient process. People feel unheard. People feel undervalued when they weren't consulted, right? So what we've done is we've established, hey, this is the minimum expectation for how we do change at ACWD, and it includes those key sort of fundamental engagement approaches with folks that are involved, the stakeholders. That's what it's about.
I don't recall seeing a report on our core metrics. I've seen, of course, in our finance report, we've had certain metrics have been shown. But if there is a core metrics, is it being maintained? It'd be interesting to, at least as one of our workshops, just to share with us how we're doing, what we're measuring, and what it shows.
Yeah, and one of the things I was thinking was, out of this strategic planning process, we might want to have different ways of communicating progress on core metrics. They are shown, the key ones are shown in the budget document associated with the various sections of the document. And of course, the board does see the details of both the initiatives and the core metrics associated with your review of my performance. But the board doesn't see things more frequently than that, at least not on a routine basis. There are certain financial core metrics that the board sees more frequently than that. But that's what I was assuming might be requested out of a discussion about tracking progress in these areas.
And the second point on your last bullet, tracking strategic initiatives, not included in the IRP here. And I'll divert here to an experience I had with the Air Force, where we had a programming function and department, and that was really took the lead and where the leadership came from, moving on up through. And that was the group We had one group that did the construction and no one did maintenance. But there was a programming function which monitored, coordinated, and helped establish an ongoing operation of the strategic plan and the overall program. And it brought in all the various factors, but it was an office. And then I would think that maybe the group that's putting together the IRP might well be one suited to monitor it during the course rather than merely getting together once every so many years to put together the next plan.
Mm-hmm.
An ongoing function.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so that's kind of how things have driven sort of the key areas of emphasis under the Office of the General Manager, but I want to let my colleagues also chime in about areas that they are responsible for. So Mr. Wunderlich's going to go first for Finance and Administration.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So there are certainly a lot of things we've been working on, really driven out of the discussions in the strategic plan. A few things happening as it relates to workforce is we are nearing finalization of an updated performance evaluation system, specifically for our management, confidential, and professional employees. We're hoping that that will go into place effective with the next calendar year. We also conducted employee engagement surveys in 2018 and 2021, and we've really developed action plans based on the feedback received and tried to implement a lot of things district-wide to help address the concerns and feedback provided through those processes. Customer engagement's been a huge focus. The customer service and meter reading division has actually implemented two pretty significant system updates. First, we went live with the new online payment and bill presentment system back in 2018. And then that system was just replaced with our new AMI customer portal, which provides really a lot more great tools to our customers. Everything from seeing your data for the now over 50,000 customers who have an AMI meter, to paying your bill, to putting in an application for a conservation program, help on tap, just so many things our customers can do to engage with us. Revenue stability is something we talk quite a bit about. There are a lot of different ways to approach that. One of the ways we focused on that is by putting surcharges into our rate structure that could be implemented when needed during a drought. We did implement surcharges temporarily during the last drought, and that definitely helped us maintain that revenue during that period. And then in terms of the broader kind of transparency type of issue that was talked about in our goal. We've already referenced the budget document. We just completed our second biannual budget with that new approach. We do that benchmarking presentation that's also been referenced every year as part of the budget workshop. And that's really given us, I think, a pretty good view of how we're comparing with a lot of similarly situated agencies here in the Bay Area. And of course, we continue to complete our audits each year, and we've had successful audits and continue to comply with those Government Finance Officers Association requirements for or kind of best practices with those reports. I'd also note that since the adoption of this plan, the largest annual rate increase we've had in terms of our base rates has been 4%. And so we've been really successful at living within that specific goal of no unexpected or oversized rate increases. I think that's been the result of a lot of different factors that we've been able to do that. But we've seen a lot of pressure in the industry, whether that's related to aging infrastructure, whether that's related to addressing kind of long-term liabilities like pension and other post-employment liabilities. But decisions the district made to responsibly fund those before we started the last strategic plan, as well as I think prudent decisions with our overall management has really helped us in that particular area. We'll turn it over to who's next? To Laura.
Great, thank you, Mr. Wunderlich. So it was mentioned about stories a moment ago, and we've had a number of different storylines happening over here in water resources. So I'll just kind of touch on a few of the things that have come out of the 2018 plan and where it's led us. Sort of in the realm of sustainability of supplies, we've spent a lot of time working on completion of the fish ladder and getting that up and running, and preparing our fish ladder operations and water stewardship or flows program that will govern how we function and operate out on the creek now with the new facilities in place. Sustainable Groundwater Management Act activities have continued to move forward with milestones of submitting our alternative update and meeting a number of other requirements. We've continued a fair amount of engagement in the regulatory development for the Conservation as a California Way of Life legislation. That was just sort of new at the time when we did the strategic plan, but now we're really getting into the details of how that's going to be implemented through regulations and what we're going to be doing for the long term. We have also seen, when we did the last strategic plan, we had come out of a recent drought and we didn't necessarily anticipate another extreme drought to immediately follow, but it did. And so that did require us to ramp up a significant amount of our conservation activities in response to the drought to keep things going. In the storyline of protecting imported water supplies, you may remember back in 2017-18, it was still the Water Fix project that we were thinking about. And so obviously there's been some evolution there, and we're now continuing our engagement on the Delta Conveyance project. And given our interest both in State Water Project and San Francisco PUC imported supplies, we're continuing to coordinate regularly with our various water supply collaborations that look out for our interests on those two systems, including state water contractors, BOSCA, and we collaborate quite frequently with our South Bay Aqueduct partners on a variety of topics as well. Innovative water management was another theme on the water resources portion of the strategic plan. And we, coming out of that plan, one of the items that we had on our to-do list was to develop a new water efficiency master plan, the first one that we would develop here at the district. And that has been a great tool going into the drought, and also now that we're coming out of the drought, starting to develop new programs for our customers to be able to meet the long-term water use efficiency regulations that are in development. And we've also spent a fair amount of time in implementing new data management and analytics for evaluating our water use efficiency programs and necessary customer outreach and support of our customers on the conservation front. We've continued a lot of engagement with our partners in the other departments working on the AMI initiative and the My Smart Water Connect customer portal, since the water conservation and water use efficiency functions of that and connections are going to be a great tool for us in the long run. And we've also continued to collaborate with various partners on the Los Vaqueros expansion project, which we're still continuing to evaluate and work on. That was, we thought it was a little closer in front of us when we put together the 2018 strategic plan, but as things go, as many of these longer term decisions and projects have gone, we're continuing to look at those as schedules have changed. And on the future water supplies front, always a fun topic. We updated our water demand forecast this last time around. That was part of the Water Efficiency Master Plan and the Urban Water Management Plan update, the 5-year update that we completed. And the other major effort on sort of future and new water supplies driven by the plan was completion of the purified water feasibility evaluation that we did, that you'll recall, in collaboration with Union Sanitary District and San Francisco PUC. And most recently, you are all aware that we are beginning the kickoff to update our 30-year integrated resources plan. And many of the activities I've talked about to date here were all sort of precursors leading up to this bigger update of the integrated resources plan. So that'll be a big focus of our work moving forward. So with that, I think I will turn it over to.
I have a question
Oh,
here.
sure.
And maybe I'm being a little forgetful, but was the board ever presented with the purified water feasibility evaluation? Some kind of report, completed report?
We did like a presentation of sort of our draft final findings of that report, I believe, several months ago. We have the final report. There's been a lot of little revisions here and there. It's still in progress, and I think planned to be done this month. So I don't know that we've sent you the full technical report. We just provided the presentation at the board meeting.
Well, I think we all would be very interested in seeing that final report.
Okay, great.
Open for comments. One theme that we've used in the past, but is not showing our report, is that water has never been a development constraint in this district. And it may be helpful to articulate that in some form. But from the community standpoint, we do not view water or allow policies that intentionally restrict water for the purpose of restricting development. And that has been I think puts us above many of the other communities and districts in the area where water was used for inappropriate means. Next, that a drought is episodic and should be viewed as a contingency. Unfortunately, some of the state laws, et cetera, seem to drought as a way of life, appears to be the mindset. But water is an inherently good thing. If you can use it, you have it available, use it. When it's not available, ask for conservation. That's hopefully we can put that in our mindset. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Awoke.
Thank you, Ms. Heides. Good evening, board members. So the 2018 strategic plan has driven the engineering and technology department priorities in several ways. We are primarily focused on infrastructure preservation and upgrades. And to that extent, under strategic plan goal number 1, which is cost effectiveness and adding value to the services that we provide, we've been engaged in managing and maintaining or upgrading several infrastructure projects. Some of those projects are listed here, such as the Alvarado Niles Pipeline Project, the Avalon Tank Slope Improvement or Abatement Project, the Sousa Concord Main Renewal Project, and the water supply channel improvements on the Vallecillos Channel, and the Fishway infrastructure that we have completed. Those all fall under that category of strategic objectives. Of course, since 2018, we had COVID, and that impacted our ability to either deliver projects on time or within the budget they were allocated for. Despite that fact, we still continue to work on some mission critical projects that are listed here. The RD1 Fish Passage Project, the Kurtner Booster Station Project, which we hope will be completed fairly soon. And reservoir projects. The clean energy program is a board priority, and that's making progress as well. So all of these projects in sum will contribute to the strategic objective of adding value to the services that we provide as a district. When it comes to the water quality focus area that Mr. Stevenson mentioned, the PFAS treatment project, even though it wasn't envisioned back when the strategic plan was being developed, it has become a district priority, and in fact, an interdepartmental priority for all of us. And you will see that theme in all of our presentations today. Further, when it comes to emergency preparedness, which is again part of strategic objective number 1, cost effectiveness and value, cybersecurity has become an increasingly important threat for most public agencies. And in that regard, we have made significant stride in improving our disaster recovery and incident response plans, conducting tabletop exercises, and addressing vulnerabilities that we've identified through assessments and audits, and we will continue to do that. The board has been very prudent in funding positions for in the area of technology and information technology. The CISO position is one of those opportunities that we have in place, so we will continue to utilize those opportunities. As far as customer service and engagement with our customers, as it was mentioned, the AMI project will be a great opportunity for the district to engage with our customers in terms of providing timely information on their water consumption. And we were able to achieve 50% implementation by the end of the last fiscal year. So we will continue to make progress on that project and work, of course, closely with water resources and finance in making that a reality for the district and our customers. When it comes to communication with our customers in the community, we've held numerous public information meetings for projects, CIP projects, and we will continue to do that. And in fact, enhance, and as Director Weed mentioned, engage with our communities instead of just informing them about what's happening at the district. So we will continue in that focus area moving forward. That's my update for now.
Any questions from the board? Don't see any public either. So,
Okay, I'll pick it up from here.
All right.
All right, well, the operations and maintenance department is really driven daily by the objectives of the strategic plan. Again, ensuring infrastructure reliability. That's basically the daily mission of our maintenance teams. Preventive maintenance replacement. I'm trying to keep our facilities running all day, all night, whenever they're needed. Proactive contingency and reliability planning. Again, this is more focused on our infrastructure, ensuring that we've got backup plans if facilities go down, having equipment, materials that we need to make repairs to keep our facilities running. Again, planning shutdowns to do maintenance. That's again, long-term, trying to keep these facilities in top operating conditions so they do operate reliably. We'd rather have them be taken offline as planned for maintenance than go offline unexpectedly. Then identifying and supporting needed improvements and replacements. Again, working with the CIP projects to implement new facilities, rehabbing facilities, building replacement facilities is key to maintain reliability. On the operations side, again, meeting water quality standards 100% of the time is their daily mission. Water treatment plant operations, monitoring, collecting samples. One of the very direct lines that's easy to see between the strategic plan objectives and our daily operations is the hardness target that the board included. And we see that monthly during our operations reports reviews. It's usually a topic of just the hardness in the system. And again, that's a goal established through strategic planning. Tracking, preparing for new regulations, whether it's PFAS, lead and copper rule, manganese, microplastics, new carb regulations. All these things are things that we have to track, account for, plan for, and then eventually implement to meet these new standards as they come up. And finally, another piece is the emergency preparation response. Again, that's the mission of a couple of our staff team members focused on preparing some of the planning documents you saw earlier this year, some board workshops, developing and implementing security improvements at our facilities, and then finally, similar to the IT efforts on the SCADA side, making improvements and security improvements on the cybersecurity side, trying to ensure reliability and safety of our facilities. With that, I will turn it back over to Mr. Stevenson.
I have a couple of comments real quick.
Please.
So, Mr. Aarons, you gave Director Gunther and I a really good presentation out in the backyard of the district with all of our fleet and everything. And with all the new carb rules that are coming down, we're going to be kind of on a fast track along with other government agencies to upgrade all of our heavy duty equipment and everything. The lighter equipment, we can be accommodated. But after we left that really nice field trip in the back, I was thinking what we need is kind of a year by year planning document with budgeted dollars. Because this is kind of something we didn't see 5 years ago. And now it's going to be compressed into in the water district world, a relatively short period of time. And so I think it would be helpful when we do our next budget document to have that laid out right in there.
And fortunate enough, being on the Operations and Water Quality Committee, we are going to be implementing a master plan to meet those new CARB rules, which will lay out for an infrastructure investment plan, as well as hopefully a schedule of implementation. So you'll be seeing hopefully just that same information over the next 6 months to a year.
I hope I'm still on the committee.
Me too.
And I also want to go back to the general manager's slide, just so it's not lost. Because I don't know if everyone was here when I talked about this. So at the CSDA conference, I sat through a detailed program on the American Disability Act, ADA website compliance. One of the revealing things was that in surveys across California, anywhere from 15 to 20% of our communities are, quote, disabled in some way, whether it's physical, eyesight, because people have color, vision problems. Maybe they only see in black and white. We have a large deaf community here in the Tri-City area. Other people that are handicapped in other variety of ways. And so when you start to realize all the different things that limit people on their accessibility to our website, and now all these government agencies, you know, attorneys are going after them, making claims. I think it's kind of getting down into the weeds here, but it needs to be a high priority tactically for the district.
I'd just like to add to Director Sethy's comments on CARB. I was happy to see it on the list here. Potentially a huge factor industry-wide, regulations being developed that cannot be met. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes. And I think it's going to be a huge amount of dollars to meet these requirements. You know, you look at the trucks out there and I think it was $200,000 for the dump truck. $500,000 for a vac truck. None of which will meet the CARB requirements at the end of their lifetime. And the state, people that are in charge, don't care. I think when the requirements start to hit, they'll start to care because the outcry will be so strong. But I'm really glad it's there, because if we could at least show we're trying when that time comes, then we could have an impact. Because if we just sit here right now and ignore it and say, trying to deal with it now, and we can't, when it comes to that point, we could tell them, told you then, we've tried up to now, we still can't do it, or here's how we're going to try to do it. Because we're talking very large dollars in a very short period of time.
And very large fines if we don't comply.
Facility type dollars.
Okay, well, appreciate your comments and been making a few notes here. One of the things that President Sethy suggested, I had mentioned that we were going to be talking about this topic and what we were planning on going through. And he suggested, hey, we should also not just talk about, how we use the current strategic plan and how it's been implemented and so forth, how it guides things, but Also take a step back and look at where we haven't been able to execute on the strategic plan in the way that we had planned to back in 2018. And why was that, right? Because that will help feed into how we treat this update or this new strategic plan that we're going to work on. And I thought that was a great idea. And so, so the exec staff and I kind of did that exercise and stepped back and said, okay, here's all these things that were in the strategic plan, the very specific initiatives and tactics, but also the intent and what we were trying to accomplish, and where were areas we didn't get as far as we wanted to back in 2018. And so here's kind of the key areas that we came up with. And I'll just step through these quickly, but certainly my exec staff colleagues have more to add, but just kind of for the board and the public, from staff's perspective, these are the key things. And of course, one of those is accomplishments in the capital improvement plan, particularly the main renewal plan. We had in our strategic plan very specific schedules for a number of things. And we got many of them done, but not all of them. And some of them are really, really key strategically for the organization. And some of those were, for instance, our very large main renewal program, seismic improvement upgrades and so forth. And so we stepped back, well, why is that? Well, there's a number of reasons, and certainly the intent of this isn't to make excuses or talking about telling stories. We're not trying to tell stories about how things went, but because I can speak to this part for sure, because I was in charge of this program when we did our strategic plan. The various schedules that we had in the strategic plan were very aggressive. They reflected our capital improvement program at the time, roughly, although we did have some very aggressive initiatives. But the schedules that we had set up, we never really, when we're planning capital program projects, we never really say, well, let's just add a lot of float because reality may step in and stop us moving forward, and particularly on the big stuff. From a planning standpoint, there's some value in doing that. But when staff is preparing their approach toward attacking a capital project, that's not a big focus. We're focused on getting things done. But that resulted in, we had some pretty aggressive schedules in our existing strategic plan. We didn't really allow for enough sort of float for things that could come up. And I will tell you, as the board knows, COVID is a huge impact on many of our programs and operations. And it was a big, big impact on the capital program in general in many ways, but certainly in the main renewal program. And I was thinking about this the other day. In fact, I was thinking about the impact of COVID, and it's pretty easy to forget that not only was it a big impact on this district and the fact that we needed to transition from our sort of old business operations to an entirely new way of doing business, initially totally virtually and then in a hybrid mode, but also how we engage with our other stakeholders in the things that we do, right? Because it wasn't just ACWD that was changing how we operate through COVID. It was also, our sister agencies, our regulators, our suppliers, and so forth. So kind of stepping back and looking at how things developed, COVID was a really, really significant impact on how we progressed through what we were planning to do. And of course, that wasn't something that was foreseen when we were doing our original strategic planning effort. In terms of other elements within our strategic plan, Mr. Wunderlich was careful to point out that we had an objective in our strategic plan at being at or below the median in terms of our average bill. And we are very, very close. We've made a whole lot of progress since then, but we haven't checked that box entirely. And he'd be able to tell you how many cents we are off of the average bill. We expect to get there soon, but we technically haven't checked that box. And of course, this applies to how we compare ourselves from a core metric standpoint, how we compare ourselves to sort of key comparator agencies. I think the board and the public have seen our comparison to a much broader range of agencies throughout the Bay Area, and we're well below the median, lower third there. But when it comes to who we kind of compare ourselves to, that are more similar to us, similar size and functions and so forth, a little bit better comparison to the types of agencies, then we're kind of right there right now.
I'll just add, I feel very optimistic about where we'll be for the next benchmarking report.
Yeah. Customer perspectives on value and cost in future customer survey. Okay, again, as mentioned, we did have an objective to do another customer survey during the 5-year strategic planning period. We're working on that right now. I mentioned that we're scoping that. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about customer engagement in the survey coming up here. There were a number of workforce related specific strategic initiatives within the strategic plan. We've done a lot of those, but there were some that we haven't completed yet. Some are remain underway. There were a number of like, performance measurement and employee performance evaluation initiatives. Some of the other sort of workforce initiatives haven't been fully completed. And in large part, when we're asking ourselves why, it's not because it wasn't a priority for the organization. We did have a lot of change taking place in human resources. We had a number of turnover and so forth. So we're definitely on the way there, but just haven't completed yet. Similar story for Alameda Creek Fisheries regulatory program submittals. We're definitely behind our sort of target, our internal target schedule for certain regulatory submittals associated with the fish passage program. That's not to say that we're not in good standing with our regulators. That's not to say we have an issue there, but it is something we're further behind than where we thought. Well, part of that was because, the construction of the infrastructure to begin with took longer than we thought back in 2017, right? And so we're in good shape there, but we're trying to be comprehensive.
Over time, that will all be forgotten. For the gift we're giving to our community.
Like I said, we're in good standing with our regulatory partners, and that is in large part to the approach that we took with the project, with the whole program. Another thing that was in the strategic plan was a board policy for prioritizing community events, engagement, and partnerships. We have not forwarded that. We've not pressed that with either the board, and it hasn't really become a big priority amongst staff yet. That may be something we want to re-examine as part of our update or on our new strategic planning process. It may not be. So, but I'm just, full disclosure, we have not brought a policy to the board related to prioritizing community engagement efforts. And then finally, it's similar to the fisheries issue, but some water resources items are behind those original schedules. Again, still on track. Many of the delays related to infrastructure and programs, flow from COVID slowdowns, a number of issues outside our control, but they don't match the schedule that was laid out back then. Next, unless there are questions about those, I'll just move forward.
It's related here, but this is dear to my heart. I suggested that we set up some workshops on a clean energy program for the district. That's 5 years ago now. And we still have yet to put in the ground a solar field.
Yeah.
And I know that's tied to supply constraints and everything else, but I am hoping that we're not going to install solar equipment that is 5 years behind the state of the art in the marketplace right now, because we got locked into a contract or something. I'm really worried about that. So I'm hoping to see in our next strategic plan something more comprehensive on clean energy, on a clean energy district program that has the aim of reducing our carbon footprint. I see other water districts doing it. They are putting in metrics for measurables over time that they can show their customers and compare to other districts. And I think that we should be able to do the same thing. Sonoma County, Sonoma Water Agency, they are on a zero carbon footprint track that they showcase to the community. So, and it's a lot more than just solar. It's looking at fuel cells, and we've done a lot on lighting, but there are other areas, you know, of efficiency, HVAC, and things like that throughout the district. So that's something I'm hoping for.
Treasurer Sethy, would you put a cost benefit on that as well? Because we've yet to reach grid parity with solar.
We have.
No. Solar
Director
still
Weed-
costs more than the grid.
No,
They have yet to
wind
reach
and
grid
solar
parity.
are now lower than gas and coal.
Only if you had thrown tax incentives to private industry.
Well, they're in place.
But
That's what
if
they're
you're
there
going to
for.
rely on that, but it's fundamentally not cost effective yet.
It's a good thing we don't have to get into tactics and figure out which tactic will meet our objectives, right? But the comment's well taken, which is this may be something that the board wants to establish from a policy standpoint about, you know, what we do and how we do it. So,
I will just
comment taken.
submit in rebuttal that there, as Director Weed has heard me say before, there are certain, it's not all about dollars and cents.
I know.
There are certain things that are the right decision that cost society a little bit more.
If we choose to go into faith-based policymaking and governance, then we can put that in writing, but identify it as faith-based.
We have a long drive coming up to Visalia in a couple of weeks. We could more than go through that debate then.
Well, when staff asked ourselves that question, we didn't come up with the faith-based thing as being something that we missed. But what we did come up with in terms of, well, what maybe were things that were not in the prior strategic plan that looking back 5 years later, that might have been good to have. And so one of those things, at least that jumped out to me, was in our prior strategic plan, we really only kind of considered resources on a pretty broad level, kind of determined, well, for each of these initiatives, is this going to be something that we're going to need kind of external resources to support? And we really didn't try and resource load the overall plan and say, from a staffing standpoint, are we equipped to, do we have the staff, do we have the capabilities to do these things? For the most part, we absolutely did. But that was an area that I think it can be easy to forget, especially when you're trying to accomplish specific things over a narrow time frame. It can be easy to forget how we're going to need to arrange for staffing resources to accomplish those objectives. So that was one area that I have been thinking is an area that we probably could have spent more time on from a staff standpoint in our last strategic plan. Another area, and the board has talked about a number of things that have really become more emerging issues since our last plan was done. Affordability is now much more top of mind and present in our industry than it was back at the time we did our current strategic plan. Certainly, you know, reasonable rates and so forth was a key consideration. But these days now it's becoming more, and you see more legislative action on these issues. You see other agencies moving in these directions. So affordability specifically wasn't addressed in those terms back then. And it may be something that we want to consider for an updated strategic plan.
We got quick point, affordability can be addressed through rate structure.
And that may be how the board chooses to tackle that, if the board chooses to tackle affordability. So another one is, now this is kind of unfair for things that we may have missed. Greater emphasis on groundwater management initiatives. It's not meant to say that as a key, like top 3 priority for the organization isn't groundwater resource management, because I think the board and the public fully understand that that is the case. But I think what this is meant to convey is groundwater, particularly with Sigma, groundwater issues and groundwater management really drives so much of what this organization does. You know, from a water supply standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, from the fact that we act currently as the regulatory arm of Regional Water Quality Control Board and other issues, it really drives what this organization does. And so I think this is meant to just say that the 2018 strategic plan didn't have as much of a focus on those types of things as many other things. And maybe that kind of resulted in a bit of a misbalance, essentially.
I can quickly add on that. Sigma provides a basis of a water market, which is where we're going to go, I think, with water. Each well in the valley will have its value. But groundwater banking under Sigma is not a beneficial use. And the solution is to follow the pattern of Irvine Ranch and own the farmland, don't rent or put into rental agreements. So hopefully we can rethink the way we're approaching our water banking with in the valley, and possibly go on the JPA with Irvine Ranch and other South Bay contractors and buy the land where you control it. Without that control, you are very vulnerable.
This will make a lovely topic in the future meetings.
That sounded like a tactic and a strategic initiative. So, okay.
Well,
Let's try to wrap it up.
It's
here.
actually,
Yeah, we're getting close.
given the dollar amounts, it becomes a strat in the long term. The time of ownership, it becomes a strategy.
Especially when you're talking about extended outlook on some of these topics, right?
You can bet, Director Weed, I'm going to ask for a return on investment proposal.
Okay, all right, back to your corners. Just quickly, similar to Sigma, another thing that really drives much of what we do from a priority standpoint, and many of our own focus and priorities and initiatives, is workplace and employee health and safety. And just mentioning that here, because again, that wasn't an area that we really programmed in as having specific strategic initiatives for the organization. But in reality, looking back, that is one of the things that really drives much of what we do. The other thing in terms of things that maybe we missed, but I know there was discussion about this, so I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but did we miss an opportunity, or would it be better to have statements of our values and of our vision included with our strategic plan? I actually have a little bit more on that in a second, so we could address that more in a moment.
Well, let me say that I think we really did miss the opportunity 5 years ago. As a whole team, a board and a management team. And this is something I've been thinking a lot about, especially when I start to look at other, not just water districts, but other government agencies in general. I'm going to just make one specific, highlight one in specific. If you go to Washington Hospital, they are a special district. They are not for profit special district. And yet it is core to their vision and values that the excess profit that they make, they state it very clearly that a key value of the hospital district is to reinvest in the community, visibly reinvest in the community when they have excess revenue. And they do. You see Washington Hospital all throughout the Tri-City area. And I think this is an area that could be explored. We could have This is a real engagement opportunity with our employees, other stakeholders, and an opportunity for a brainstorm session where we all just sit down and say, what if we kind of expanded our vision, expanded our value statement as to who we are as an organization. And I think Washington Hospital is a very good example of that.
All right.
Any
Okay,
other
well,
comments from the board?
Interesting.
Washington Hospital has an insatiable demand for their services. I don't know that ours are. Our demand is insatiable.
well,
Water is not insatiably in demand.
I don't know if I agree with that.
You're gonna have a hydration station on every corner.
if we took it away, I think we'd find that it's
Right.
insatiable.
Everybody needs water.
High in priority.
Okay, well, that was all supposed to be a break for you, but now the break's over. And so now I'm looking for your thoughts and input. And again, nothing's binding here, initial reactions. So in terms of scoping this plan or this update, we talked a little bit about, our current plan's a 5-year duration. Some plans are much longer term. Some plans are shorter term. As I understand it from CSDA, the vast majority are about 5 years. And that's, of course, the duration of our own plan. If you go too short, then you really risk getting into more of the tactical in your plan. And again, you don't want a lot of tactics in your strategic plan. And yet you don't have, the plan itself is not going to be sufficient to inform those longer term and longer range plans that rely on the strategic plan, right? Whereas if it's too long, then you're spending a lot of time and resources and you're getting bit by the thing that is going to inevitably bite us anyway, which is those uncertainties, right? Now you're spending more time and effort on planning in an environment where you're not going to have that level of certainty out in the longer term anyway. And then of course, from a practical standpoint, if you have a real long strategic plan and you're not revisiting it routinely, you're going to outlive the folks that helped put it together and that are using it and relying on it, right? You're going to outlive perhaps board, this composition of this board, or your general manager or management team. So I wanted to kind of ping the board again. Nothing's held in stone, but it'll help staff kind of get our arms around the approach for an update or a new strategic plan. What do you think about a duration for the strategic plan?
5 years.
I like 5 years.
I like 25 and revisit it every 5 years. But you need a strategic plan that goes beyond the current project lines.
So I'm kind of hearing 5-year plan in terms of having the plan and updating it and so forth, but the plan itself has to be looking out into the future. It may have been 2 different ways of saying the same thing. If you're saying, I want to be looking at least 25 years out, but I want to update the plan on an interim basis during that period, that I think can be accomplished with like a 5-year plan that gets as we move along.
I think our current strategic plan actually was written with that longer term vision in mind. And specifically when we get down to like water supply issues and things like that. But that's where we could entertain some new thinking as we go through it again.
Yeah, I think it was looking down the road, and you remember there's a little graphic in there too. We saw a juncture coming up from a water supply standpoint. We had different paths that we expected would be available to us. Well, we're pretty much at that juncture kind of right now. And that will be a big part of our integrated resources planning. We'll be talking through those options at that juncture. But I mean, as we discussed, our financial plan goes out many, many years. Our capital improvement program is a 25-year plan. So the strategic plan is really informing these things. So it's going to be a long range vision, but in terms of how long this plan has to last before it in and of itself is obsolete. I'm hearing on the order of 5 years, and that's helpful.
Means every 5 years, you add 5 years to the plan.
Effectively.
Okay,
I would just like to take a quick break and ask if there's any public input or comment to this point.
see a
Mr.
hand up.
Nishimura, please.
Well, since you asked, I think a strategic plan should reflect where the future state that the board desires of the district, right? So it's where you want to be, where you aspire the district to be in these areas, and then the tactical is how you get there, right? So the future state can be pretty far out there, but because of the uncertainties and things that would impact the path by which you would try to achieve your future state, to Director Weed's point, yeah, you do need to revisit it and plan out your tactics with a time horizon that isn't so long, such that your uncertainties become your enemy, right? So, just wanted to throw that out there since Director or President Sethy asked for input. Thanks.
Okay, those are good thoughts.
Okay, taking a look at the next sort of area, would love to hear the board's thinking. Stakeholder participation. The last strategic planning process, we had some level of public engagement. It wasn't a ton. And I think it was very valuable that we had that. And then as part of the plan itself, the board said, hey, we want to do another customer survey. Again, we had a customer survey that sort of helped to frame the areas that were important to our customers at the time we did the last strategic plan. And the board programmed in another customer survey to come up. So right now, staff is, got a note on my screen, sorry. Staff is scoping another customer survey, and our thought was, again, we could use it to ask some of the same questions with regard to how satisfied our customers are with certain things that we do. And that will help us continue the trend to see if we're doing better or worse in those same dimensions, those same areas that we've asked our customers about in the past. But also ask about other things. And again, I think there'll be other opportunities to chime in on the specifics of the customer survey. But we are thinking about asking about things like rate structures, rates, the billing and billing frequency. Ask some specific questions about ACWD programs, and then also routine communications. What works best for our customers in the way of engagement and information that we're sharing with them? The various ways that we've been using, are they effective? Do they need to, would they receive better information that's delivered in different ways? Special communications, we have our RAN system. We have other means of contacting customers if, say, there's a water quality issue or other issues that we want to ensure our customers are informed about. What's the best ways to engage with our customers through communication? So we're scoping out questions like that right now. But, if there are concerns amongst the board about doing another survey, they're not free. They do provide very valuable information that helps us tailor our programs to meet our customers' needs. And it may be helpful for the board to hear from our customers as we engage on an update of our strategic plan.
You might want to add in one or two questions about education in our schools, because a lot of adults hear about water district through their kids.
Yeah, it's amazing how often I was told about what's going on here by my kids.
So I can definitely support the survey. It's good to hear back from our customers. It's definitely good to do a trend analysis to see how well we're doing or not. But I would think we could take this opportunity to expand it a little bit towards value. So we're asking things that's fairly routine on the customer facing side. How are we doing? Do you like your rate? But one of the questions that I am actually kind of interested to hear from our customer is actually value judgment. What's more important to you? Cost, quality, or reliability, right? Those are the three pillars that we always juggle our rate and our projects around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having 5 elected people trying to make that determination for the community, this is actually a very good opportunity. If you're going to do the survey, just ask, if you have to rank these 3,
Mm-hmm.
how would you rank it? Right, that could guide our strategic planning in a very indirect way to put our customers' concern into the planning process.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so instead of our traditional survey, that's why I say I could support a survey, but maybe I think we should expand it, give it a little bit more depth instead of these very shallow,
Yeah.
superficial questions. Let's drill a little bit deeper to see if we could indirectly get their input through
Mm-hmm.
that type of value judgment to see what is important to you as
Right.
your customer.
Yeah. I think the board may be aware that as part of our integrated resources planning process, we will be doing another customer survey. And one of the things that's kind of unfortunate is we're going to be doing these kind of right in parallel, but so that we're trying to coordinate those surveys so that we're not duplicating things. But I think when you're talking about water supply and all of the issues around integrated resources planning, quality, reliability, cost are definitely going to be included in it. So we'll capture those in one of those 2 surveys. I can't promise which one it'll be, but I think that's a great observation.
If I can build on Director Huang's comments, which I totally endorse. One of the other ways to measure value is against the services that are provided to residents from other utilities, PG&E, Union Sanitary, city services, garbage. And you can get a good feel for where we stand against other services in the community, hospitals too. Schools.
Okay.
I can add on as well. One of the questions that I would like to see us ask that kind of relates to Director Huang's suggestion as well is perceived risks to the district. I would like to understand what customers see as potential risks to water supply or water quality. Customers don't always pay as much attention to how we're doing, but they're paying a lot of attention to how the media is portraying how other districts are. And so I would just be interested in either of these customer surveys if we can determine what's top of mind for our customers. Are they more concerned about rates, or are they more concerned about water quality or regulations that are coming up? Is it PFAS? I think we have a good opportunity to really understand, well, what's really driving our customers and what's worrying them. The other thing I would mention, I just want to make sure, and I'm sure staff is taking this into account, but I want to make sure that we're hearing from customers across the service area. I know, when we do surveys, sometimes we're hearing from the same people that we always hear from. And I just want to make sure that we're hearing from folks that we don't traditionally get feedback from.
Okay.
Director Akbari?
Yeah.
I would be interested in the answer to those questions too, but I would kind of caution that most customers are not aware of any of the risks facing this district except for one. There's only one that is top of mind in my interactions with the community, and that is a big earthquake on the Hayward Fault. That is number one. That will disrupt everybody's water services.
Yeah.
and they cannot see regulatory issues coming down the pipeline. They have no knowledge of it.
Oh, I agree with that. I think
They didn't see PFAS coming down. So when you look at it from a customer standpoint, delivery and reliability of my water, well, we're in year 155 right now, and the maximum is 165 on that fault. The big one is gonna happen.
I definitely agree with that. Right.
Well, your next slide is right here, the big picture.
Okay. Well, and first of all, the more dangerous fault by far is the emission fault. 2 to 4 times greater in magnitude and the vertical accelerations. But do we not have a customer survey with each Prop 218 rate increase?
No. You mean in terms of how many protests we get? We do get information and feedback from our customers, yeah.
You know, Director Weed, though, I think he brings up a good point. When do we fill the boardroom? Well, we fill it when we have a large rate increase. We get a lot of feedback when we get large rate increases. I read them all. It can be difficult. Another thing we do get here, and staff's gonna kill. So I'm watching for things flying from that direction.
I'll duck.
You know, in the past year, we've had very successful open houses. And I'm trying to remember if we were kind of take that same tactic and mold some of this into an open house on our facility, the plant, the blending facility, I don't know if you can get them out to the fish ladder, but you know, the number of people we had come through that desal plant tour, tremendous amount of work for staff. But boy, talk about an opportunity to put a survey in front of the public for various things. Just a thought. Now you can throw your mic and your computer at me. I've got a water bottle over there.
They're throwing their
This-
pom-poms up.
This may be a question for legal review, but we do have the Prop 218 notice. If we were to modify that slightly, could we not expand it to get a customer survey basically done every time we have our get input from the public?
It sounds like a tactic we want to evaluate. So if like the overall objective is more frequent information about customers' priorities and feedback, then we can figure out ways of doing that and kind of compare options, right?
Well, you can see Pleasanton going through it right now.
Yeah,
Last Tuesday, they postponed making a decision on their 218.
they've had a lot of good customer feedback. I do see a hand up by Mr. Nishimura.
Yeah, customer surveys are always kind of interesting, right? And I just wanted to make sure that the district doesn't fall into the trap of asking a question that they can't really act upon. So, for example, I think I heard earlier, would you rather prioritize rates versus PFAS? The fact is, if the EPA regulations or the California regulations become enforced, the district is going to have to do something about PFAS, right? There's no choice. It has to deliver water that meets whatever standard becomes the final rule, and there's no choice to be made there, right? So, I think doing customer service is great. Getting customer input is great, but if you phrase the question or the choices, you need to be very careful to make sure that it's really giving an honest choice to the customer to give feedback, right? Saying rates versus PFAS is really not a choice, because the district will have to meet the PFAS rule, and there will be an impact to the rates, right? So don't frustrate the customer by giving them a false sense of empowerment when in reality it's not gonna move the needle. Thanks.
Thank
Right.
you. If you would kindly put your hand down, that would be appreciated.
Okay, we can step into the next slide and there's an awful lot going on here, but all it's trying to convey is we've got a bunch of different kinds of stakeholders. We have internal stakeholders and external stakeholders here. They're shown in blue and orange respectively. On the internal stakeholders, we've got, of course, our own employees, our employee groups, represented groups. We have retirees, I'm still calling them internal here. Field, technical, administrative. We have our various represented groups and temporaries and the whole range of different kinds of internal interest that from employees. And then we also have, of course, us, everybody in this room. We're all stakeholders in this organization. And then from an external standpoint, we've got, public agencies, our peers in the industry, industry organizations, regulators, the various public groups around us. And then outside of that, we've got our customers themselves, future employees, future boards, the media, other groups around the community. This isn't meant to be an exhaustive list, but as we're kind of brainstorming who are the stakeholders of this organization, I think it's going to be a helpful part of the process to do that and to also ask ourselves, what are the impacts that we have on those stakeholders and what are the impacts that those stakeholders have on us and where do our interests align? And then as part of that, try and think about how should we be engaging with stakeholders over time? But also, I think one of the things that I'm thinking about, and I'd be interested in hearing from the board is, how do we want to engage with stakeholders as part of the process to update our strategic plan? Recognizing that many stakeholders are going to have not a ton of interest in engaging deeply, but maybe some will. Some of the stakeholders that may be more impactful on us, maybe they want to engage, maybe they don't. But just from the board's perspective, we got a range of different kinds of stakeholders. And again, nothing's binding right now because I'm just trying to scope out what our next steps might be. But what does the board see in the way of engaging these various stakeholder groups?
Mr. Stevenson, I'd like to just do a quick process check because I'm wondering if anybody needs a break. I think from looking at the slides, and we have a few reports afterward, we may go another 45 minutes or even up.
I hope to keep it to 45 or less. I wouldn't want to go
Yeah.
over that. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if,
Okay, brief comment on the slide, unless we're going to wrap this one up. I've been somewhat distressed that we, within the industry, one of our stakeholders appears to be our peer groups within the other water agencies, where we want to get involved in projects for the sake of getting in the conga line, whether it be a small tertiary treatment facility in Dublin, San Ramon, where our benefit is minimus, to other things just to be part of the group. So I think there's a risk there, and I think we've bought into projects that we need not have bought into in order to be part of for whatever peer pressure is involved. Thank you.
okay, we'll take a break right now for a few minutes at 5:56 and we'll try to reconvene 5 minutes.
It's
Okay.
probably not doable. Oops, sorry.
Here
So-
we go.
So I do have a really most likely not doable, but out of the box idea for reaching out to the education community. This actually would be an interesting high school project, strategic planning.
Oh, boy.
Actually, if we could make this a very discrete project, I would not be surprised if we come up with really good ideas. Right, every year the video contest and when we used to have poster and slogan contests, they come out with the most creative ideas.
I agree with you.
So I don't know, is it even doable to actually turn this into a project, a high school project that it's a good way for us to reach out to the education community, right?
Mhm.
Have them participate and give us some ideas, but I can't fathom the scope and how to do it. So it's just kind of really wacky idea out there.
All you have to do is offer some prize money for best ideas.
Like a scholarship or something for the school. I will say, I do really like that idea. You know, I know it's a little bit hard to kind of figure out how we would, like what the parameters of that project might look like. But if there's even just a specific area
Yeah.
of, be it the strategic plan or a similar type of project that we could give to the schools as a competition.
We'll give that
or-
some thought.
Yeah.
If I can find a high school student that can corral you all and bring you to a consensus decision about any topic in the strategic plan, they're hired. But no, it's an interesting thought, and so we'll think about it. And again, nothing here is binding. It's a brainstorming session, right? So that's good.
Sorry, if I
Any
could-
other
if I could
thoughts
just,
while
like,
we're on this topic?
just build on that point a little bit. You know, most universities require a capstone project in your senior year, especially if you're in engineering or business. But this is the type of project that many universities are looking for. They're always reaching out to public and private agencies to see if they can supply them with those capstone projects. So just kind of building on that, I know you mentioned high schools, and I'm kind of going after the college students, but there's definitely opportunities where we can engage students.
All right.
I'm gonna try to keep us on track here to get out by 7.
Not a problem. So we'll take your feedback about this topic anytime, but I just wanted to get it in front of you because this is going to be something we should be thinking about as we move through a strategic planning process. Okay, I have another big picture scoping item. And that is, are there things that we should be, that we already think we might want to add? And we had a little bit of discussion about a value statement and a vision statement. And there's been some discussion about how that might be valuable. I actually do think that this would be a really, really valuable thing for our organization. I think if we don't put it in our strategic plan, I think that's okay. But I think our vision and our values permeate everything we actually do, right? And if we are clear with our employees what our values are and what our vision is, that does translate into those little decisions that everybody makes every day. And those are the things that can be reinforced. And I have some thoughts about that already. And actually it made a number of inroads in some of those areas. But I thought it was worth tossing out to the board. You want to include a bit of a process for establishing what our values and our vision statement might be and include that in our strategic plan update.
The word culture comes to mind. It's
Mhm.
commonly used, and culture rules.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast is the phrase that some use.
I sign up for all of this.
Okay, check. And I do have in there strategic objective for governance. That's a big question mark. We can get to that later, but there may be some value in that too. All right, big questions to consider. So now I've alluded to this sort of choice a couple of times. We have an option. Again, nothing's binding here. We'll have some additional discussion, but just want to get that initial thought. Do you think we need to scrap the plan that we have and build a new plan from the ground up? Or do you think that we should be more focused on building upon the plan that we have, reframing things as necessary, updating things as necessary, and then kind of adding to it? Where are your heads at in that continuum?
I like the idea of doing more of an update, and I think this goes back to the comments that Director Weed was making about how he likes the idea of a long-term vision for the planning document, but breaking it out into those 5-year chunks. You know, at the beginning of this slide deck, you got a lot of board feedback on how we feel about the existing set of strategic priorities, and I think you heard overwhelmingly we agree with that vision. My sense would be that update is probably a little bit appropriate.
Same
Okay.
here.
You go update, the plan becomes a living document.
We're continuing with that concept.
And you have that long-term philosophy in a living document that's reviewed every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Sign up for the same thing.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. And lastly, I think this is our last big question for you. And based upon what we've heard so far, we have some more thinking to do, but I'm just curious what the board thinks. Last process that this board went through, it was a facilitated process. We brought a fella in who kind of helped to guide the discussion. And there are pros and cons to that, right? You all experienced that process that way. If we have the process facilitated, it may have the advantage of helping to sort of minimize bias that, say, staff might have, or maybe even the board has, maximize some objectivity, kind of look at things from less of an insider's perspective with all the baggage that we carry with us. Perhaps it's an opportunity to challenge the board and the staff on topics as needed. Possibly have an impact on reducing the resources that are required by staff. Right now, we have really one person who's focused on this in terms of implementing a process with you all, although there'll be many people involved ultimately. But so maybe there's some help there. And if to the extent we have a bit more of a public engagement element of all this, there may be some help to add resource from that standpoint. Downsides, it can add some time because we'd have to go out and find this resource, and it's not free. So, but I thought I'd get your initial thoughts.
Well, I brought this up with you. I'm in favor of bringing somebody in from the outside because I think it leads to people seeing us as a transparent agency, that this isn't a process driven from within the organization and the board is just rubber stamping it. I think it really helps to have an outside facilitator, especially if you're dealing with other people from the community. And as we saw in that larger graphic, you know, all of the other stakeholders that we might want to involve in the community. So you have to look at it from their eyes. How are they going to be seeing what we're trying to put together that benefits everybody in the community? It's not just an agency thing.
I'm leaning towards facilitated, but it really depends on how much we're talking about. If you're telling me this is going to be a $400 facilitation for this report, I'll tell you no, heck no.
Okay.
If
No,
there's
it has
somebody
to
out
be
there
reasonable.
that can give us some guidance on how to format a strategic plan to its effectiveness, possibly, but to have limited value, I think, to have someone sitting there eliciting comments and going through the process that we have seen in the past, where everybody tosses something in, and in that wonderful, we put tags on the wall, and for what purpose? For what reason? It's just a process for the sake of process. There is some ways we can improve our formatting, tying it together, looking for methodologies that we can for implementation and documentation, possibly. But I see the consultant better of more value there than having someone come in here that we can talk to and elicit our generalities. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
This is the one part of the presentation when I was going through it earlier that I wasn't totally sure. I can go either way. If we do bring on a consultant, fine. If we decide that staff wants to take the project on their own, good with that as well.
Okay.
I just don't have a strong opinion.
I would suggest that consultant is probably more beneficial to the staff who's coordinating it than he is to the board.
Got it.
That could be, and that might help the fact that we give the staff somebody to assist them in herding the cats here. And it also gives a little bit of like Director Sethy says, that public impression that we're not doing our own internal biased review. But you also have to be careful to ensure that you get a consultant who's not biased in their own mind in certain things. Suddenly, we're tracking down some path that's, an advocate's path that I want to track this way. Because they're out there.
Well, I thought the last consultant was actually quite helpful. And I don't mind, because I come out of the business world where we do it all the time, where you have to go through little game exercises where you're weighing things out. The point of bringing in somebody from the, one of the reasons is to help reach consensus. That's between among the staff and the board. So that you're not putting extraneous things in to your strategic plan. And I felt there was a lot of value at a very reasonable cost the last time we went out for a consultant.
Yeah, and I think part of the trick is ensuring that this is the result of this full board's work. And in order to get that consensus, or at least close to it as we can, it does take some level of process. But we'll put some thought to that and see if there are ways to help streamline things.
Well, let me provide a couple of outside examples, more recent. Fremont City Council elected to go with a facilitator for both its new sustainability plan and for its climate action plan. And I think that really helped pull everyone from the community together, the different commissioners. It forced people to think outside the box. When you bring in somebody from the outside, that they are proposing ideas for discussion that maybe we just don't see. We're too close to one another. But I thought last time the gentleman that we had came at a very reasonable cost. There's quite a few people out there that we can go for recommendations.
How does this differ from the role of the consultants we currently have that have been interviewed members of the board? Board members met with 2 consultants.
Yeah, sharing initial information about the process for the water supply plan or the integrated resource plan. It differs because of the scope of each of those efforts, right? So the integrated resource plan and water supply plan is going to really focus on the water supply future for the organization. And that is a whole process unto itself. And I think the board will find that over the next several months. That will be a facilitated process. There'll be a lot of work. This, on the other hand, is kind of related, but this is really focusing on the strategies for the organization and where our priorities are as an organization. So it's broader in some respects than the water supply master planning effort. And so from that standpoint, they're different. But yeah, you're right. The board is going to be engaged in a whole lot of work on several fronts. Ideally, we didn't want it to turn out this way from a timing standpoint, but that's just kind of the way things played out. It actually is going to be okay, I think. So that's how they differ. So I think we're done. I think staff has the feedback, that initial feedback that we need. This is super helpful.
We have agreement here about hiring a consultant?
I think so.
Yeah, I heard general
Okay.
positivity
All right.
and I heard some sense of flexibility. So
Okay.
So let me move on by sort of summarizing what I think we heard.
I would only make one request, that you keep the board engaged with selection of consultant. Maybe we get a review of 3 people that we can look at their background resumes, something like that.
Is that something the board's interested in?
My only concern is delaying the process.
You mean for 24 hours? For 24 hours?
If they're willing, we could do it.
Oh, if the staff
Exactly.
comes down to selection of 3 possibilities and they give the board 24-hour review.
Oh, I thought you wanted to,
What is your preference here?
I thought you wanted to interview.
No,
Oh, okay.
just take a quick look at their resume. Indicate who you might be in favor of.
Okay.
We're just one input.
We'll,
It's not our decision.
okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about that and we may circle back with the board on sort of alternatives, but appreciate the suggestion. Okay. So let me confirm. Yeah. So that'll be one of the things we'll want to talk about. Sort of how to accomplish various.
Yeah, we're just trying to get input, and how we implement it, we'll definitely be coordinating on and being sure you comply with the law.
Yep. It's good, but that's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for your initial reaction. So this is super helpful. Here's some initial reactions I heard from you all. Duration of the plan. Basically, the 5-year thing makes sense from a revisited and updated standpoint, continue as a living document, but we're looking ahead into the future, well into the future. From stakeholder participation standpoint, I heard, yeah, customer survey, but yes, we're good with the customer survey, but make sure that we're capturing the balance of what our customers value or what they see as important. Given that we all have trade-offs to make, right? So we want to understand their view about those trade-offs too. In terms of additions to the strategic plan, we talked about value statement and vision and so forth. It looks like the board's pretty much on board with that, which I think is great. New versus update, we heard update. And so that's very much in line with, I think, staff's initial thinking too. So that makes a lot of sense. And the board's open to a facilitator, and we'll work internally about different approaches toward bringing on somebody to help us move through this process. So all of that said, I think the next steps are fairly self-explanatory. If you move on to the next one, we'll be working on that facilitator. We'll be working on that customer survey. We'll be thinking through our outreach approach, and then we'll schedule some additional interactions with the board. It'll probably be a little bit before we re-engage in a big way with the board on the strategic planning process. We'll have some more kind of our own strategic planning to do internally. But we'll be setting that plan going forward. So
The workshop that's set for November 2nd, is that the next time we're going to deal with this, or is that?
under general manager's reports, I was going to report on a couple of upcoming
Okay.
special board meetings
Great.
in the plan there. So I'll cover that in just a moment. Okay. Are we ready to, in fact, move on to the next part of our
We can
agenda?
move on to item 5, general manager's reports.
All right. Well, just so happens that we do have a couple of super quick general manager's reports. First of all, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Water Resources, Ms. Heides, who has at least one, maybe two, depends on what happened over email in the last couple hours.
Great, thanks, Mr. Stevenson. It'll be 2 quick reports. So the first one is bittersweet. Doug Young from our Groundwater Resources Division is going to be retiring, which we're very sad this fall, but happy for him. And we're going to be having a geology themed celebration for him here at headquarters on Tuesday, October 17th at 2 p.m. So you're all welcome to join us in this social and ceremonial occasion if you would like.
If you're available, because I know some of us aren't.
Yeah. And he will also be at the board meeting to receive his resolution in the future as well. So the second quick update is late breaking news this afternoon. Just came through during the board meeting here today. The State Water Board, you're aware, is currently considering updates to the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan focused on the Sacramento River and the tributaries and such, and various things in the Delta that go on. And that includes consideration of proposed voluntary agreements. So today, the State Water Board actually released a draft staff report in support of the Sacramento Delta updates to the Bay Delta Plan for public review and comment. This draft staff report is essentially an environmental document that complies with CEQA and other laws and provides the public with an opportunity to review and comment on the analyses over the next few months. So as you're looking through this, you'll see the draft report doesn't include a specific proposal for moving forward in the Delta. Rather, it evaluates a variety of impacts and associated mitigation measures of a range of alternatives for updating the Bay Delta Plan, including the original 2018 framework proposed by the state board, as well as the proposed voluntary agreements alternative, along with other alternatives. So we anticipate there's going to be media coverage on this, and I think your email inboxes are already starting to pile up. So we just wanted to make you aware of the latest development. Also, I wanted to let you know that you may hear the voluntary agreements being referred to as the agreements to support healthy rivers and landscapes to better describe what is trying to be accomplished with this voluntary agreement. So this is an exciting development. And since it's late breaking, I have nothing else on that, but we will certainly plan to provide more information at a later date. And that's all I have.
Ms. Itis, I was reading some news and I'm not sure if I understood it correctly, that the State Water Board is bypassing the voluntary agreements in favor of what they call in-stream flows that are beneficial to the San Joaquin and Sacramento rivers and the estuary.
So that's interesting if that's what you read. What my understanding is from what I have heard is that unimpaired flows option is in the staff report, as is the voluntary agreements. And I believe the unimpaired flows option is still kind of the front runner in the report, but they will be considering all of the options. And I know there's a lot of excitement and momentum around the voluntary agreement option. So I think I'm really hopeful, and we'll see where this all goes.
Let's all download it tonight and have some happy reading.
There was a presentation at an Aqua conference in Monterey about 4 years ago, where a representative from the State Water Resources Control Board said the only authority we have is to address flows. And second, we don't have the staff to do anything else. We'll see where it goes.
That is a huge development in water, this voluntary agreement thing. It is huge. It's been
Well,
underway.
it hasn't matured, but
Right, there's
it's
still a
still
ways
there.
to go, but this is a big milestone. So,
well, it made it through through a hurdle. It hasn't been excluded yet.
right. Okay. Mr. Awoke also has some good news to share.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson, and good evening once again, board members. Once again, the district has received the MESAC Excellence in Technology Practices Award. I am happy to report that we received this award. The district received this award from the Municipal Information Systems Association of California, also known as MESAC, at their annual conference this week, actually. And this is the 5th time the district has received this award. As a reminder, the IT Practices Award is intended to foster and recognize outstanding governance and operation practices in the areas of information technology in local public service organizations such as our ACWD. The award and evaluation process requires the submission of responses to more than 200 questions that examine an agency's practices across 12 different subject areas, including budgeting, procurement, staffing, customer service, operations, and project management, among others. The district submittal was evaluated by expert IT professionals in member agencies, and it was found to have met or exceeded best practices in most of these practice areas. I do want to take this opportunity to recognize the hard work and dedication of the district's IT team. I also especially want to thank our IT manager, Aziz Nakvi, who's in fact retiring very soon, for leading this effort. Even though he's retiring, I can guarantee you that we will continue pursuing this award in future years. So that's my update, and thank you.
Good report.
There's a ton of value in that award, but the process to achieve it, because it is a full audit and we get a lot of helpful input by our peers throughout the industry, and it's been super helpful for us. The first year we did it, we got the achievement as opposed to excellent. The last 4 years have been excellent. Mr. Awoke, if after Aziz leaves, we get dropped back down to achievement, or maybe aren't successful in achieving the award, we'll understand that maybe we need to make a correction in trajectory, but I'm pretty confident in our IT team. Okay. I'm going to do the special board meeting item next. So we have currently special board meetings on October 19th and on November 2nd. They've been scheduled, about this time last year, they were put on the calendar. Based upon, those both have to do with both strategic planning and also our water supply master planning. So based upon how things have developed and schedule wise and sort of the next steps in both those processes, staff does not see the need for either of those special board meetings, October 19th nor November 2nd. And I know we're not all going to be here on October 19th. So from a business standpoint, staff doesn't see the need for those meetings. And so unless there's some objection, we'll go ahead and cancel both of those. There's also a special board meeting in December 7th. And whether we need that is a little bit up in the air still. So we'll keep that on the schedule for now, but we will cancel the next two upcoming special board meetings. Okay. With that in mind, just wanted to quickly note that Delta Conveyance, to our note, will have some directors talking about their experience having gone through the tour most recently. But there are more tours that have been scheduled and that are being scheduled. One of those is on October 11th. And as it stands right now, just kind of confirming with Director Huang, right now we have you on that tour on October 11th. I know you've got a lot of things going on around that time, but that's what we have right now, along with Mr. Awoke. There is room on that tour for folks that can make it and are interested. There are also other tours that are being scoped out. I know right now we're working with Delta Conveyance Project on another potential tour on the timeframe of November 14th or 15th. I know that November 2nd was another date that was suggested. From the Delta Conveyance Project's standpoint, they thought that the 14th and or 15th might be better from their standpoint. We'll be sending some more information out about that tour date once it gets settled. There is a overall sort of request from the Delta Conveyance Project. Hey, if there are folks who are interested in attending these tours, let's get them on the bus because there's a lot of space that's available. And of course, we know we'll hear a report. There's a lot of interesting things that folks see when they attend that tour. So just putting that out there for now, November 14th or 15th is being considered. And also there's still more space on the bus for October 11th. And that completes our general manager's reports.
Okay, we'll turn to director's comments and our agenda item requests. I'll go to Director Weed first. 6.1, report on the Delta Conveyance Tour.
Delta Conveyance Tour, encourage anyone to go out and take a look at the Delta. We started at Bethany. It's remarkable how, and we had some members of the staff there with our highest and Mr. Stevenson, how unimpressive Bethany Reservoir is. It's a white spot in the California Aqueduct. But it functions and it functions well and will be critical to the future. I was also amazed at and why I didn't pick up on it earlier, 600-acre parcels that will be used with each of the adits where they're going to be dropping a tunnel machine down, but they need a lot of land to take the mud that they're going to be removing and drying it out. So it's a lot of real estate, but there's a lot of real estate in the Delta. It's at the very preliminary stages of a big project. Thank you.
Did anyone from the staff want to comment on the tour?
I know I had a couple of takeaways, but I think just keeping things brief, I was kind of surprised with how much momentum there is behind the Bethany alignment. There are multiple alignments in the environmental document. The decision hasn't been made which to go with, but there's an awful lot of momentum behind the Bethany alignment. It makes a whole lot of sense for lots of reasons. It was good to get out there from an environmental standpoint and an engagement standpoint, and from the ability for us to talk to our customers about the various interests of the folks involved. It was good to go out and see these sites with our own eyes and understand the haul routes, to understand the actual properties that will be involved in, as Director Reed points out, staging of supplies and materials and where the infrastructure is going to be. So from that standpoint, it was also interesting to learn that ISI, the manufacturer of our own fish screens, is the manufacturer of the screens that are going to supply the Delta Conveyance Project too. And we got to go see their facilities and see how our own screens were made. So from that standpoint, there were some really good things on the tour to see.
Great. So next up is item 6.2, and I'll start off and then we'll go down this way on the board. I thought we had a wonderful Region 5 program and tour. Tours in the plural. I want to compliment Director, our Water Resources Director, Ms. Heides, who I thought put on an absolutely excellent presentation. And I hope next time that we have an opportunity, we could actually film you doing that presentation and put on our website. That was terrific. And there were a lot of people that complimented that presentation throughout the day. You may not have heard it directly, but we did. And there was a lot of positive feedback from everybody that attended. I was surprised that there were so many people from across the state that really had an interest in visiting our district. But nice that we could have hosted it. That's it.
I'd like to concur with what Director Sethy said. I had to leave early, so I didn't get to come back here. I left at D-Cell and a lot to cover. Also a lot of people from not just Region 5. And, you know, I think we had a lot to offer. Having a chance to talk to the executive director, and they're down here and they're looking, and it's like, yeah, people talk about things, we have those things. And they're able to, you know, people talk about D-Cell. Well, we have a D-Cell, it's been running for 20 years. And they're, I think, surprised in some ways. Talk about fish ladders. No, we have a fish ladder. Here it is, successful. Well, apparently successful. We've had 1 year. We'll see. But still, the, you know, projects coming to fruition, what we have here, and then telling them, well, yeah, we don't have time to go here. We don't have time to go here. We don't have time to go here. I think it was very, very successful. You hear a lot about planning, you hear a lot about things like that. Well, there was stuff in the ground. And I was disappointed I had to leave early, but we put on, I think staff did a wonderful job. Very difficult to put together something like that. All those visiting stages in the desal plan, having to move people around the various sites, particularly a lot of interest in the desal plan, what we're doing, how we did it. And just each project, each thing led to another. So yeah, very good job by everybody. Very much enjoyed Director Sethy's little history lesson. You forgot about the transcontinental. But,
Well, I'm just going to say I completely concur with Director Sethy and Director Gunther. So Ms. Heides, you actually did a really terrific job in the presentation. So thank you. Great pace, great content, and you showcased our district really well. Also, thank you to all the staff that helped out at the fish ladder. Right. I believe we have David Kim, our operator, we have Leonard, we have Thomas, and at the desal facilities, each station, I talked to Chris, I talked to Mike. Every one of our staff are so knowledgeable about our facility, and it shows from their explanation that they are really proud of what they're doing and their accomplishments. I believe that not only we did well, we also provided a lot of very useful information for the attendees. It's the actual operational experience just based on the questions that our staff received as part of the tour. You know, what's the pros and cons? How do you need to modify the process? What are your lessons learned? Those definitely have values for the Region 5 members that attended. So a big thank you to our staff, not just the one that guided the tour, but everybody else behind the scenes. Great job, and thank you.
Thank you. Well done. And the expertise of the staff, I think, came through and it was well received. I of the 7 members that were nominated for the 7 positions on Region 5, all 7 were, including myself, were elected. I'm now on the board as a board member. There is an opening because Ernie Avila is been moving on to vice presidency. So the board itself will be appointing a position for the open seat on the Region 5. I believe we're restricted to 1 member per district. So, but if you know of other individuals in the Region 5 area, will be a selection if past practice holds of the 6 members on the Region 5 board will fill the opening. It's a council is the proper term. Thank you.
I really enjoyed giving the history during lunch. And I kept getting time signals from our general manager to shorten it. I had a lot more to talk about.
You barely got to the gold rush and we and we had to get on the bus basically.
No, I think the most important thing I wanted to leave everybody with was the story of the Quarry Lakes and the state of nature case that Morris Hyman fought all the way to the US Supreme Court, and that people were able to look right there in front of them and realize that this case affects all their districts across the state of California. This is what became the public trust doctrine that we all live with today. And when you go out to Mono Lake, there's a some kind of historical marker there honoring that state of nature case by Morris Hyman, the founder of Fremont Bank and our longtime attorney for 40 years. That's the case that was used against Los Angeles Power and Water to finally get Los Angeles to stop draining the Eastern Sierras and thus be able to refill Mono Lake over what's going to probably be a 100-year exercise. But that's how important our contribution as a district was to California and US environmental law. And that's what I wanted everybody to leave with. That's why I closed on it.
Well done.
All right.
All right.
Any other business?
Item 7, adjournment.
Okay, I said I'd get us out by 7 and it is,
I have 6:46.
okay, that's what it is. Meeting over.
You know, as far as the consultant
Jen
goes,
is in-